I think everybody has probably had a chance for introductions. I know if I let y'all go, you will talk to each other all day. So you will get an opportunity to do that in just a few minutes. I would like to, at this time, introduce our speaker for the day. Lori McClung is the president of Advocacy and Communication Solutions, ACS, in Cleveland, Ohio. She directs strategic communication planning, government relations and advocacy efforts, policy analysis, and strategy development for ACS clients. Lori has over 25 years' experience in media, public policy, and advocacy. During those years, she has successfully engaged people on various educational, health, and human services and economic issues at the federal, state, and local levels. ACS is one of the only female and minority-owned consulting firms in Ohio and has gained a national reputation for not only its communication and strategy development, but also a deep understanding of policy and advocacy, especially for organizations within the early childhood and K-12 education sectors. Her full bio is located on the back of your agenda, so you can read up. And I ask that you please join me in welcoming Lori to us today. And she will be presenting from her seat here. We appreciate her traveling to us despite an injury that occurred less than a week ago. So we are making some accommodations, and we really thank you for coming and joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me, even if you can't see me? I will attempt to move around every now and then so you know I'm here. Thank you very much for having me here in North Carolina. No one is sadder than me, I assure you, that I am sitting like this right now. But tomorrow I'm going to find out that everything's fine and I'll be walking on Saturday. That's what I decide. That's what I've decided. So I really appreciate you all coming and spending a day with us, because we all know how busy you are and that you're doing this in your spare time, as we like to say. My family's in Greensboro, actually, so don't tell them I'm here. I'm not going to get a chance to see them before I fly out this afternoon. I know, bad move, but I thought I'd be here for the whole week, and now I have to go home, so shh. So I want to ask, how many of you came in today saying, communication's important, and I absolutely get it, but I just don't have the time to do anything about it? Just raise your hands. Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you thought communication's important, but it's just not my background? Keep your hands up. How about it's on my list of priorities, but it's just not at the top of the list of my priorities? Keep them up. How about I just don't feel comfortable? Got to keep them up. How about it costs too much? How about I don't know where to start? All right, I'm going to say all but maybe 3 of you have your hand up. Thank you for putting your hands down. All right, what if I told you by the end of the day today, or in the next 3 hours, you're going to feel comfortable? You're going to know that you don't have to add a ton of time to your day, and you're going to have the tools to not only do the work, but to help other people back at home be better communicators, and you're going to realize that communication should be first, not last. How many people believe that? Oh, wow. It must be the power of my leg. Well done. All right, well, good. So then we're done. Our day is done. So, and I'm sorry, am I reverberating too much? Is it driving everyone crazy? Okay. So in my more than 20 years of experience, I have truly seen efforts succeed and fail solely on the weight of good or bad communication. We've all seen it, right? This is not actually an apples to apples comparison, but let's think about the BP oil spill. Could they have done 1 or 2 things beyond, of course, not letting it happen, from their communication perspective that would have maybe made a slight difference on how people felt? They could have pretended like they cared, even if they didn't, but they really didn't, and they actually said it. They said, this is harder for us than it is us BP, than it is for anybody else. Really? Than anybody else? No one else was affected? That is a great example of really poor communication. Now, We're not in that situation, generally speaking, in the early childhood world, but that's an outlier of an example of where communication can really absolutely hurt you. You are going to benefit from my own experience, I am telling you, but I'm also going to show you, because I believe in show and tell, not just telling you, that it's critical for communication that you're able to promote your own cause, because the truth is, if you don't tell your story, no one else is going to. If we don't tell the Smart Start story, if we don't tell the early childhood story, no one else is going to. Or, worse, someone's going to tell the story, but not the way you want them to. And that happens a lot in early childhood. Someone else is framing it, someone else is using words or a perspective that's just not right or true or accurate or complete. You need to be able to tell your story, the early childhood story, the Smart Start story, and that's what we're going to be able to do today. Because the truth is, in a vacuum, if we don't tell our story, we make up our own truth, right? So if you ask someone a question and you don't get the information, well, first of all, our brains automatically go to a bad place, right? We're thinking, oh my God, worst case scenario. I asked my husband, what happened with the dog last night? And he didn't answer. So now I immediately think, what did he tear up? Right? If he had just said, everything's fine, I would have been fine. But in a vacuum, we go to the worst case scenario. That's what happens when we don't tell our own story. Or we have people who just shouldn't. Would you mind showing? So I've got a couple of videos. This is about the show and tell. Hopefully.
What?
Oh, press play. Yes. This is my Vanna today, also known as
Why
Diane.
is early child development important?
Where's the picture?
The overarching answer is because it is a determining influence on subsequent life chances and health. But why is that? The principal reason is to be found in the fact that in the early years of life, there are a wide range of very key milestones or sensitive periods in brain and biological development. As I'm speaking, this slide is scrolling out, showing some of the early elements of brain development that occur before children reach school age, which is in the dark gray portion of the slide, showing that by the time kids reach school age, a huge amount has taken place in terms of their opportunities to develop basic competencies that will code for success in later years.
Stop. Okay, go to the second one. So that is an example of someone telling an early childhood story in their way.
And this is Pedro's family.
Oh,
They live
no.
together.
Sorry.
Small family business.
No, that's not it.
Farming
Not
Just
it.
like the ones you're drinking now.
Not it.
Pedro used to have 2 cows that helped him plow a field. One of the cows died of old age.
So 2 different ways, right, of talking about early childhood. One, a little dry, a little bit scientific, informative, but did it engage people? We can just go to the PowerPoint. Thank you. Perfect. Thanks. But did it really engage you? Not really. Maybe it engaged you, but is it engaging the general public? Not at all. They're lost within the first 10 seconds, or they're bored in the first 10 seconds of what that guy was saying. Versus a little interesting, a little different way that we showed early childhood. It's not the whole way to talk about early childhood, but it was a visual, right? A couple of short, quick ways that they're describing early childhood, and then the little girl blowing the windmill. It's not the whole way you talk about it, but it is a different way of talking about early childhood, and that's what we have to start thinking about. How do we engage people who really don't care what we have to say? Or they just don't know about it. It's not their world, and that's okay. They're not living it and breathing it the way we are. So here's the great thing about Smart Start. You're not starting from scratch. There are so many stories to tell with Smart Start. We just have to tell those stories. Whether it is your personal connection to Smart Start, your personal connection to early childhood, the history of Smart Start wins, whether they're policy wins or the impact on kids, the outcomes or the impact of Smart Start, you're not starting from scratch. So all you have to do is figure out what's the thing that you feel most comfortable with, and let's talk about that. So it's about filling that vacuum with your story. And people see Smart Start as a national model. You may not realize that the rest of the country is standing on your shoulders. Because of the great work you've done, the rest of the country is actually doing so much better around early childhood. You're living it and breathing it, so you may not realize just what you've done for the rest of the world. You've heard it, but I'm telling you, from a state that liberally took as many ideas as we possibly could from Smart Start, thank you. We learned a lot. We liberally took from the things that you're doing, and we regularly say to our legislature, our media, our community leaders, you keep saying we want to be like North Carolina. One of the reasons we want to be like North Carolina is because of early childhood. In terms of now, everything's perfect in North Carolina, I understand. But in terms of the investment, and in terms of businesses saying that one of the reasons they want to move here, there's taxes and all the rest, but one of it's about early childhood. That businesses say that. We want our businesses to do the same in every other state in the country. So just remember that we are standing on your shoulders. In fact, many of you might have heard from David Lawrence when he came and spoke here previously and talked about all the great things that are happening in other states. That's wonderful. Well, those things are happening in part because of what you guys have done here. So now it's about helping to make sure that you even out what you're doing with the communication work that you need to do. It's time to tell your story. And you've got a great many opportunities, but one that just came out is the North Carolina poll. Did everyone see that? Diane, I know, sent it out to folks, and hopefully you got it from 1,000 other sources. Good. So in that poll, you got a lot of new opportunities, right? We know that people believe that early childhood is as important or more important than just about anything else in the state. We know that people actually are getting that it makes a difference to our economy. We know that it's not a partisan issue. We know it's not about where you live in the state, how much money you make, what your background is. People are actually getting it. So now's our chance really to capitalize on that energy, capitalize on that poll. We should be doing communication far and wide on the results of that poll. So whether it's an advocacy effort, a building public will effort, a ballot issue, a policy issue, building public awareness, whatever it is that you're doing in your local area, I am telling you that most effective early childhood efforts, wherever you are in the country, no matter what they're doing, from New York to Ohio to California to Florida, they have communication embedded in what they're doing. They have it as integral. They have it not as a nice to have. They have it as one of their top priorities. The most successful efforts, whether it's at the local, state, regional, or at national level, embed communication, and they focus on it from the very beginning. And so I view this as kind of, we're starting the clock again. We are going to start making communication at the top of the list here, not at the middle, not at the end, not as a nice to have, not as a one-off, but it's going to be something that's integral to the success of your effort. We know that if we make communication an important part of our early childhood work and make it part of the things that we focus on, our community leaders can put that on their non-negotiable list. That's what we want. We want community leaders, whether they are business leaders or media or policymakers, to put early childhood on the non-negotiable list. And that's what communication can really help you do. Oops. So today, we're going to talk about having those right messages. So communication, there's a lot of different elements, and we'll talk about many of them. But today we're going to focus on these issues here. How do you know what to say, who to say it to, who should say it, and how to get started? Sometimes we're not the best messengers. Sometimes we've got to get somebody else to tell our story. How do we figure out in our communities who that is? That's what we really want to figure out. And we want to make sure that we prioritize it as much as staffing, as much as fundraising, or anything else. So let's talk about some basic definitions. When I talk about communication, I'm talking about strategic communication. And strategic communication is not just, I can talk, so I'll do it. It's about being strategic, knowing where you want to go, how you want to get there, and what you want to see at the very end. And when I talk about it, it could include TV or radio or newspaper commercials, so that's paid media. It could include TV, radio, or newspaper stories, and that's great, and that's earned media. It could be annual brochure or annual reports or brochures or billboards, and that's all great. But the thing is, you don't need to do all those things. Those are nice, those are also nice to haves. If you have the resources, fabulous. But it's just as important, if not more, to be able to have those basic talking points, those basic one-pagers, those basic fact sheets, that basic understanding of what you want to say and who you want to say it to. Websites are important. That's where people are looking for that. But social media, maybe it's important, but maybe not. It really depends on your purpose. I think we've started to move into, everyone do social media. Well, it depends on who you're talking to and what you want them to do. So it's not about jumping in, it's about being strategic, and that's what we really want to do. You can pick and choose the elements you want to start with, but it needs to be part of a broader communication effort. And the truth is, it's not just the job of the 3 communication professionals who didn't raise their hands already, because they already know what they're doing. It's the job of everybody in this room. Everybody. And everybody who's not in this room. Because if you think about our numbers, when we put them all together, we would be unstoppable if each of us just dedicated, let's call it 30 minutes a week. That's it. 30 minutes a week to communication. That's all. If everybody did that, imagine what we would be able to do. The truth is, communication is not rocket science. I mean, it's not as easy as I can talk so I can communicate. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But it really is, if you have tools, if you practice, you'll be able to do it, and that's what we're going to be able to do. Quick question. How many of you go to meetings, all-day meetings, conferences, and you get super excited about what you can do, and then you go back home and life gets in the way? Anybody? Right? So I know I have a shelf, actually I've got a bookshelf, an entire bookshelf of every conference I go to, and I have all these copious notes of, oh my God, this was so great, and I'm going to go home, and then 3 years later I'm like, oh yeah, I went to that conference. I wonder what I thought at that time. That's not going to happen today. That's not going to happen, because you're going to actually go home with stuff that's written out that you're going to be able to share with others, and you're going to be able to spread the joy. That's the plan. So when I talk about communication, and I talked about it being strategic, I mean it has to be purposeful. It has to be informed. It has to be deliberate, and it has to be measurable. So purposeful means you have a plan. You know what you want to do. You know where you're trying to go. It's intentional. Informed means you know about who you're talking to. You're informed about the assets that you have, and quite honestly, the challenges that you have. You got to be honest about what those challenges are, and informed about your environment. And you have to communicate with intent. You need to be deliberate. You're not, again, just talking to talk. And it needs to be measurable. We need to know whether or not what we're doing is working. It doesn't mean that you have to invest $100,000 in a research survey, although it's great if you've got the resources, fabulous. But you can set some short-term benchmarks to see if anyone's paying attention and if it's made a difference. As long as you set up some sort of measurement or an opportunity for evaluation to see if what you're doing makes sense, that's what you need to do. So again, we're not going to do all of these things today, but the idea is these are all of the elements of a strategic communication plan or a strategic communication effort. Ultimately, what you'd like to do is to have all of these things. We're not going to tackle it all today, but if you could only pick 1 or 2 things, it's about getting started, and that's really what we want to try to do. So where are we going to start? We're going to start with messaging. We got to figure out what we want to say. and how we're going to say it. So in just a little bit, you guys at your tables are actually going to start to develop your message. And then you're going to share it with the rest of the group, or the rest of the room. So I just wanted to give you the forewarning that everyone's going to have an opportunity, and I mean every table, at some point to get up in front of the microphone. So FYI, I'm giving you the heads up. So let's talk about messaging. So here's what we know. While there is no silver bullet for messaging and a message, there are some things that we know from research and experience that really resonate with most audiences. So it's more the general public. You can't say it's every audience, you can't say it's every community, but there are some big picture concepts that if you embed these into your messages, you're going to be a little bit more successful. They're not perfect, as I said, but they're the kinds of concepts that generally resonate with most people, no matter age, race, party politics, income, doesn't matter, background with early childhood. Some of these, as I mentioned, make better connections with folks than others. But as long as in general, this is the concept to keep in mind, you use these kinds of things and try to talk about early childhood and connect them with education, with families, and betterment of society, those are the kinds of concepts that really resonate with people. So keep that in mind. And when we talk about early childhood, one of the things that we need to do is we need to be a little bit more clear, a little bit more concise, and a little bit more succinct. If your grandmother can't understand it, then you've not done the job that you need to do. If you can't say it in a breath, your statement's too long. We tend to want to tell everybody every single thing, everything we know about early childhood, because we are super excited about it, and that's great. But that's not what everybody needs to know, right? Oops. I got it, thanks. So what are some basic principles of message development? I've already started to talk about some of them. So one of the things that we need to do when we think about our messages, and you're getting ready to start filling them in, is that we don't need to elaborate or argue about our position or our issue. We tend to want to do that as well. We want to stay positive. Positive messages are the things that people want to hear. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't start with, if you don't do this, there could be a problem, but you have to pivot to the positive. People want a solution. They don't want to constantly be depressed that everything, if you don't do early childhood, the world's going to absolutely fall apart. Everyone's going to jail. Every mother is going to go back on welfare. There's where everyone's going to be out of a job. That depresses people. They want to know that early childhood is the solution to the society's ills, to their community's ills. That's what they want to know. So we need to present a solution. And we need to have the same messages, not multiple messages. Doesn't mean you can't tailor them to what you need, but we tend to each say, well, this is what's most important in my area. There's modifications you can make, but we know, particularly in a world of technology, that the brain now needs to hear things 7 to 10 times in order for it to resonate the very first time. So the only way that it's going to really resonate with North Carolinians is that they hear from all of you 100 times. You've got to say it over and over again, the same kinds of things. That's what we need to do. And we need to meet people where they are. Not where we want them to be, not where we are. We need to meet them where they are. If they are way over here, that's where we start. We need to help people and invite them into the solution. It's kind of that show tell again. If we just start telling people everything and we don't invite them to help solve the problem, then they're not as engaged. We need to engage them in this to get them super excited about what's going on. So how do we do that? Part of the way is, of course, all of these things, but the big one that I want to point out is number 2. And I talked about this before. It's not just about you. We need everyone else to say our message too, whether it is parents, children. I don't know if did anyone see the video that just came out this past week of preschoolers who, when they walk around, there's a little video camera and it's showing everything from their perspective. It just came out yesterday or the day before. That is a great example of a way to engage people in, so that here's what the kids are learning, and you can see it from their perspective, and it engages you. It's yet another way of getting somebody else to tell the message. In this case, it's the kids themselves, right? So we need to make sure that everybody is on board with what we're doing and making sure that everybody has the same messages. And here's what we have to avoid doing, and we are so not good at this. We have some serious bad habits we have got to break. And here they are. Early childhood, it's not the right thing to do. I mean, it is the right thing to do. But that's not what you tell people. You don't say, it's the right thing to do, and assume that they're going to actually do it. But oh my God, we have got to break that habit. Please, it's not the right thing to do. It actually is proven to actually make a difference. And there's a story that goes along with it. We need to paint data with that story. It cannot be all academic either, though. So that first video, all academic, snore. Who wants to hear all of that? Now you're lecturing at them. We don't want to have it all academic. We need to paint that picture. We need to tell the whole story. And parents aren't either good or bad. So when we try to paint a picture of parents, we got to talk about them as human beings. And we tend to put parents, when we do our messages, in one category or the other. The answer is neither, because you don't know about your audience and how they feel. And you can immediately alienate half the people you're talking to. So don't try to characterize parents as either good or bad. And my favorite is around research proves or science proves. It's not that you can't give them the data, because you should. And we have the data. We know it, but it can't be by itself, because immediately someone's going to say, well, what scientist did it? And how do we know that that scientist wasn't paid? Or how do we know that that research wasn't biased? So we've got to be careful on how we do those academic messages. It can't be exclusive. It can be part of the conversation, but not the whole thing. So it's little nuances like that as you're getting ready to make up your own statements, keep those things in mind. And I know I've alluded to it, and I'm hoping you've heard it 4 times now, because remember, 7 to 10 times, so we're on 4. We need to give jargon the boot. I mean, really. I could have done 17 slides like this, right? In the early childhood field, every day we talk in alphabet soup and acronyms. When you go to a dinner party and you talk about developmentally appropriately practice and QRIS and all the, I mean, how many blank stares? If they respond at all, or do they open up another bottle of wine? I mean, nobody wants to hear all of this stuff. That jargon is too much. It makes us feel better. It doesn't educate them or engage them at all. That's because we talk in that wonky language. It's because we're passionate about what we do, and that's okay. Passion is great, but when we speak in jargon, we're speaking to ourselves. We're not actually getting engaged with other people. Simplicity is best. It's not easy. It's easy to keep using the same language we've always done. But today we're going to talk about 8 steps to get you to give jargon the boot. When you leave, you're going to be able to get people excited about early childhood and engage them. And it's not just me that's saying it. I mean, if Bono says that we have to do a better job, then it must be true. Okay? So what Bono says is, if people don't understand us, it's not because the people we are talking to don't get it, it's because we're not good at explaining it. It's like the comedian who's blaming the audience for not laughing at their jokes. It's because your jokes are bad. That's why people aren't laughing at them. It's the same thing. If our explanation isn't good, it's not their fault, it's our fault, and that means we need to tell a better story. So as Bono points out, being able to say what you stand for in a simple and accurate way is critical. It's our opportunity to set the story straight, to have our own discussion on our own issue, so that no matter who you're talking to, you're more effective. And I know we think early childhood, it's really complicated. If we don't tell them these details, they'll never understand. Really? So how about biological anthropologists? That's a little more on the complicated side, right? But here's the way that somebody described what a biological anthropologist does. I study old human stuff. We look at the old stuff, we see when and where humans came from, and when we look, and why we look and act so funny instead of acting like other animals. Oh, well, that I get. right? It's concise, it's using small words, it's not actually going into all the science. And this is from Mental Floss, at Mental Floss magazine. If you've never read it, it is great. Mental Floss magazine, they just did a list where they compiled the 18 most complicated scientific ideas and then got one sentence to describe them. That's what they did. So as you can see, Megan, she frames it up simply and quickly. And when that happens, your brain doesn't get stuck on the details. You can actually figure out what she's doing, and then you can move on and you have an opportunity to engage. You, instead of asking for clarification and asking what a word means, you say, oh, I get it, tell me more, right? That's what we want to have happen with early childhood. And in a world where we have scant minutes to pay attention to anything, we need to bring people to our side as fast as possible. We don't want people nodding their heads along as if they know what we're talking about, and then they go off and they are done onto something else. We instead want them to be asking us questions and connecting. Oops, I'm going to go back. So here, I'm going to read you just two other examples that I thought were great. So a political economist. So how did they describe what they do? Warren Buffett, none of the above. Warren Durrett, who's a political economist, said, I try to see if bad people with power let bad people in business do bad things for easy money. Also, I try to see if this hurts good people and their money. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I actually think I would have said it a little differently, but you get the point. He was like, I try to see if bad people in business do bad things for easy money. Oh, okay, I get that. Or a particle physicist. Again, we think early childhood is complicated. Particle physicist. Where I work, we slam things together, small things, to break them into even smaller things until we have the smallest things possible. This is how we know what matter is made of. That is Paul Sorensen at Brookhaven National Laboratory, right? We slam small things together to break them into even smaller things until we have the smallest things possible. That's what a particle physicist does. Obviously, early childhood, it's its own world. But if they can break down being a particle physicist or a biological anthropologist, I feel like we can maybe break it down. So, we are literally to the minute on time. So this is good, because here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 questions, the 8 steps, and the 12 tips of coming up with your message and giving jargon the boot. You have a worksheet, and you're not going to start it yet because you're going to work on it on your tables, but I want to explain what's on the worksheet, tell you the questions, and then you're going to get started. See, to the second. My timer just went off. Perfect. Okay, so here's the number 1 thing. Your mission is not your message at all. Your mission is an important part of your organization. It's a guiding star for the work you do. It's the tool by which you measure success, but it is absolutely not your message. So we put Smart Start's mission and Smart Start's message. You don't get to pick that, just so you know. So, and I'll know, because you're going to come up and present. But that's to give you an idea of mission to message. Your mission could be, and I'm going to give you a couple of other examples. Our mission is to serve and act on behalf of the needs, rights, and well-being of all young children with the primary focus on the provision of educational and developmental services and resources. Holy moly. Okay, that could be a mission. But what you might say is, I make sure government officials understand why preschool is important to our children's future. Oh, I get that. Or, I make sure kids have a safe and nurturing place to learn and grow so they're ready to learn on their first day of kindergarten. That's a little bit more simple. Or I work with a group of people to measure how well we teach our young children compared with what the federal government expects of them now. None of those are perfect. Those are just little examples of how people have started to talk about what they do. But do you see the difference? They're humanizing the work. You meet people where they are in their understanding and you make it easy for them to engage. So this is going to be about step 1. When you are in your groups, think about how to explain what you do. When it comes to work in these groups, you're going to write that down in 9 words or less. 9 words or less. That's the deal. Other examples are just on the Common Core, which I don't know if 1 or 2 of you have heard about that whole Common Core thing. Just thought I'd bring it up. So that's another example. Here's what Common Core is supposed to do, but here's how people should be talking about it. But that's not how it's happening. But I'm going to set that aside. That's a conversation for a break. Okay.
Now I got to figure out how to.
I know, okay, but so Kiva was the one we did before.
Right, I couldn't find the full screen for that people one, though.
All you have to do is click the blue letters. You don't have to go back out.
It's actually, I don't think
It
it's,
wasn't working.
yeah.
So that, we had tried that earlier, but
Here it is, right there, how Kiva works.
I see it, but hang on, my finger, this mouse, okay.
That's okay, if it can't be full screen, that's okay.
All right, because I don't see the full screen.
That's all right.
And I need to go back.
And his income has been cut in half. Pedro now has just barely enough money to feed his family and can't afford to buy a new cow. This is Kiva. Kiva is a website where people like you can lend money to people like Pedro. Say you decide to lend $25. Your $25 goes from you to Kiva to a microfinance institution near Pedro and is used to fund a small part of a loan that they've made to Pedro. When 100 people like you all lend $25, the loan is fully funded. With this loan, Pedro can buy a tractor and grow 10 times as many coffee beans as he did before. Pedro can repay his loan to you in no time. Once you get your money back, you can choose to relend it to someone else on Kiva or withdraw your money. And as simple as that, you've helped a family halfway around the world, and it didn't cost you a dime.
That's about micro-lending. A much more complicated kind of way, a complicated issue, but they made it kind of simple, right? You give your money here, it goes to, and they humanized it, you give it to Pedro. Pedro is able to actually do something at home that actually helps his family, and the money comes back to you, and you can choose to keep doing it or not. That's micro-lending. It's a great example of taking a complicated concept and then humanizing it and breaking it down. Here's one more, and then we're going to get started.
Climate change costs lives. Just ask Sophia. In 2007, the floods came here, to Sophia's village in Bangladesh. They were worse than anyone could remember. As the water poured into Sophia's home, a 5-year-old son was swept away by the torrent. She never saw him again. You can act now to help moms like Sophia. Helping costs from as little as £1 a week. It's happening here, affecting the poorest people around the world. Floods are now more frequent and severe as a result of climate change. Together we can do something now. Oxfam is working with families like Sophia's to help protect their homes and harvests. Just £1 a week could help raise homes above flood levels and secure surrounding riverbank. Climate change costs lives. Let's sort it here and now. To make a donation, please call 0800 31 31 31 or go to oxfam.org.uk.
So
Climate change.
Sorry,
that's okay.
is that the last one?
Thank you. So not only do we want to tell people what we do, we want to tell them how we do it, and we want to tell them why it matters, right? So it's not that we do early childhood or we care about young kids. We need to tell people what we do and how you do it. It's your time to shine. It's what makes you different from any other organization. That's what you want to do. You want to demonstrate that. Here's just a visual of why does it matter. So the idea here is it's an infographic. It's clear, it's concise. Not that you're going to design infographics at your table, although you could, should you so desire. But instead, it's about the showing and the telling, and it still invites people into your story. And you actually have it in your packet. It's probably harder to see. Do they have it? Yep. So it's probably harder to see, but it's leading the audience ultimately to where you want to go. And then you want to, oh, I lied. And then you want to talk about why they should care. So does anyone, just before we start it, does anyone remember the commercial from, okay, so am I the oldest person in the room? Close enough. So the 70s and 80s when the United Negro College Fund, a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right. You remember it. You remember it how many years later? And why do we remember it?
Which one is it?
Nope, gonna go down. Oh, there. Yep.
But that's in the PowerPoint. This is,
Oh,
hang on. So which one is it?
scroll down maybe. He had it loaded.
Yeah, I don't see it.
On the left-hand side, can you scroll down? Keep going down.
It looked like it was, you think
Oh, was it up? Was it at the very top? No?
College fund right here?
No.
Oh.
All right, well, while we are searching for it, because it has the picture of the family at the table.
Okay, hang on.
He found it oh wait, look in the top right. See the bars at the very top?
Over here,
At the very top of the whole, yep. So
right there.
early childhood.
childhood Spain and
Yep, keep
Leon.
going.
Little brother.
Yep, that's it. That's it. There it is.
I really don't know what to say. You're the first in this family to get into college.
And we're so proud of you.
I can't do it, can I? Your mother and I have been over this a million times. Her work, my extra job. We just can't afford to send you.
You mean to let you do?
I understand. Maybe next year. We cannot continue to deny bright, hard-working students the opportunity of going to college simply because they lack the funds. Please support the United Negro College Fund and help keep tuition costs down and the dream alive.
Jimmy?
Yes? The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
I know, I was just going to say, I heard this, aww. I know, it still makes me cry too. But you know what? We remember it because it was humanized. It wasn't, we connected it to something positive that was a challenge, but we connected it to something positive. We evoked emotion. This was the part about not using just academic messages. We've got to evoke the emotion in people so somebody wants to do something about it. We have to engage them. And I feel like early childhood is something where we can evoke a lot of emotion. We just have to find the right words to say it. We have to figure out who we're talking to make that happen. So we need to tell people what we do, how we do it, why it matters, and why they should care. That's why they should care. Right there. They can actually make a difference. And that's what we need to be able to do for early childhood. So we're going to make a transition, right, in terms of our language. We're going to talk about all children. We're going to have positive outcomes. We're going to tell people why they should care and have brain development messages that people can understand. And we're going to avoid making people feel terrible about what they don't do for early childhood. We're not going to tell everybody every single thing that we know. We're not going to tell everything about brain science. It's a little bit too scientific. And we're not going to say what we need to say. We're going to say what they need to hear. So you've got these instructions in your packet.
And this is the 9-word thing?
This is your this is the 9-word. It's your ACS messaging boot camp. Create your menu of statements. So what you want to try to do, and this is going to be important for later on, what you want to try to do is in 9 words or less tell people what you do. Okay? It's your mission, but you're saying it in 9 words or less. Again, if your grandmother wouldn't understand it, erase it and start again, or maybe not erase because you're using a pen probably, but write down all the ways you work to meet your mission, so that's how you do it, why it matters, and you can see the instructions in terms of what you're trying to accomplish here and why people should care. You also have 5 topics
The hosts have a yellow sheet.
Oh, okay. So the hosts have a yellow sheet. You all need to decide, and just take a couple of minutes. There's no rocket science to what you pick. Pick one of the topics on that yellow sheet for your table. That's going to be your topic for the next set of exercises. So whatever it is that makes sense for your region. So think about something, because you want to take this home and use it at home. What's most important in your community right now? Pick one of those topics, and that's how you're going to help to develop your message. So it's based on, obviously, Smart Start, but there will be different scenarios. Pick one of them and try to come up with your messages related to that scenario. And spend about 6 minutes per how you do it, why you do it, what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and why anyone should care. So about 6 minutes per question, because you're not going to finish everything. So you want to keep moving on. So go ahead and get started. Stand up and tell us what you came up with. Do we have, and just as a reminder, volunteer now or volunteer later. Every table is going to get the opportunity to come to the microphone. I just wanted to put that out there. So would anyone like to come up and tell the rest of your colleagues a couple of the things that you came up with on who you are, what you do, why it matters, and why anyone should care? Anyone? Who wants to be first?
What do we have to do?
Just give a couple of examples that you came up with of who you are, how you do it, why it matters, and why anyone should care. All right, yay, our first volunteer. And tell everybody who you are and your topic.
Well, I am volunteered from the Mideast group here. I am from Chatham County. I'm Smart Start Executive Director. My name is Jen. We are building tomorrow's workforce today.
Ah, nice. 9 words or less. I like it. Anybody else? That was perfect. One more volunteer on the first one. All right. Get it. Unless you want to yell, but you can do that too.
Perspective Day is in the
It's true, so I don't actually know the jargon at all. But we said we're in the Midwest, we're talking to stakeholders and community partners that we're helping families help our youngest children get ready for kindergarten.
Okay, great. All right. So who wants to give I just need one volunteer. Ooh, that is, okay. One volunteer for how you do it, one volunteer for why it matters, and one volunteer for why people should care. Who wants to? And then there was almost silence. Come on, it's okay, there's no judgment, or if there's judgment, we'll tell you we're judging, it's fine. All right. Wait, which one are you doing? Good, all right, that's what I need.
We have to say who we are.
That would be good. Okay. And where you're from?
I'm Sarah from Avery.
And who are you talking to? What was your topic?
Legislators, right? Policymakers. We invest in young children by building strong community partnerships, strengthening families, and early education.
Good. All right. Good. So we had families, we had education, we had investing. So some of those words, right, are the ones that we talked about are great examples. All right. Why does it matter? Okay. Yep. Come on up.
I don't mind doing this because we came up with, Stan helped us come up with a good one. Why it matters, and we're talking to parents.
Okay, and which region are you?
East.
Okay.
Why it matters is because it's never too early to begin preparing children for success.
Good, okay. It's never too early. So it's positive, it's not negative, there's success. Who doesn't want success? All right. Why should we care? And who are you talking to?
We are talking to business leaders. I'm Nadine Tucker from Wilson County Partnership.
Great.
It provides high-quality experiences for children at risk.
Okay, great. All right. So you get the idea, right? That what you really want to be able to do is to quickly, succinctly, without jargon, really explain those 4 things. If we are able to, as a group, as an organization, as a movement, to answer those 4 questions in a very quick, succinct way, we will move things forward. We will be able to be successful, and that's what we can do. And then with Smart Start, as I've said, you can start the Smart Start story with these 4 questions. How does Smart Start do its work? Why should people care about Smart Start? Why should they care? What's the impact of Smart Start? That's what you want to be able to do. You want to take this worksheet and do this back at home. You don't have to spend all day doing it. You can spend 30 minutes every day or every week answering 1 question if you want. But the idea is to keep trying to refine it over and over. All right, so now we know what we want to say, or we have an idea of the kinds of things we want to say and how we're going to say them. Who's going to actually do the talking? And who are we talking to? So it's the messenger and the audience. So we talked about this before, so this should be at least the 3rd time you've heard this, right? 7 to 10 times. Sometimes we're not the best messenger. Sometimes we need other people to be our messengers. Sometimes we're a fine messenger depending on who the audience is, and that's okay. So a messenger needs to be a strategic decision. We need to make sure that whoever we're talking to, the messenger has the most credibility or has some credibility with that audience. If I'm trying to tell my husband to go see a certain movie, I'm not the right messenger. I need to call his roommate in DC to tell him that it was a good movie. He needs to then call my husband in Ohio, and then we are going to see that movie. It happens. I'm telling you, it happens more times than I would like, but it's true. I'm not the best messenger on picking a movie. I have learned that in 20 years, and that's fine. Now I have the credibility with good old Eric in DC, and that is a true story. So we need to figure out the same thing for early childhood. Who has the best, who's the most persuasive person for the audience that we need to talk to? Well, here's what we know from research. Not that we want to say it's research, but it's research. So we know that generally people want to hear from parents about the importance of early childhood because it's about them. It's more personal. They're not paid generally to talk about this stuff. People actually believe doctors, nurses, folks who are in the medical profession. For whatever set of reasons, it's because generally what we know from research is because people assume they have a natural connection with young children. So pediatricians in particular. People get that and they think that they're not getting anything out of it. And we revere the medical profession in a different way than, unfortunately, some of our education profession, which is, it is what it is. We got to take people where they are. If that's who they revere, we get our medical profession to be able to talk about stuff. Elementary school teachers, interestingly enough, it's elementary school, not necessarily preschool, it's elementary school because they're actually getting the kids after the fact. That's the part that people get. And they understand with the movement across the country with the 3rd grade reading guarantee and you read to learn versus learning to read, that they're the ones who are actually experiencing kids who have those high quality experiences or not. So those elementary school teachers are important. So having those 3rd-party validators, that's what these folks are, is absolutely important. Business leaders, it depends on the audience. Sometimes business leaders are a great messenger. Sometimes they're not. I think for a while we as a field got stuck on, well, I've got to have the business. They've got to be the ones that say something. Well, not always. It depends on who they're talking to. So picking your messenger needs to be strategic. In some states, the best messenger we found is the school psychologist. In some states, that school psychologist that's who people pay attention to. Every state, every community, every effort has a different best messenger, and it's about being strategic about that and trying to understand where the audience is. Those third-party validators, so that's basically who else besides us? So obviously, we as the early childhood field should be messengers, everybody in this room and folks who aren't in it. But finding other people who aren't expected, or maybe they're expected but they don't always engage, those are great people. It's like an ex-smoker, right? They're the best messenger about why not to smoke. Not only are they rabid about anti-smoking because they were smokers before, but also because they were there before. So they're a great third-party validator. It's amazing, but research really shows that they're some of the best messengers on not smoking. It's the same kind of concept with early childhood. We got to find people that you're not expecting, or even if you're expecting them, they don't often do it. So it's us plus them. Again, if we add all of us together and we bring in our third-party validators, we have a lot of people to choose from, a lot. So what we're going to do now is actually think about how you can actually be that messenger. And think about who it is that you can connect with to deliver a message. So we call this a Mavens and Connectors exercise, because does everyone remember the book, the Tipping Point? Thank you, The Tipping Point. Does anyone know? So we have a couple of people. So in there's a few different kinds of people. We're all categorized in a few different ways. And in fact, you have an exercise called Making Community Relations and Communication Your Business. It's about using your personal networks for professional purposes. What we know is that we actually, in some cases, are the best messengers in our own personal networks, but we don't even think about doing it. We don't even consider it. We don't realize that on Saturdays when we go to soccer, or Friday nights when we go to football games, the person we're sitting next to actually happens to be the president of X, Y, and Z company. And we're talking about football, we're talking about our kids on the field, but we don't think about the fact that if I happen to mention in my volunteer capacity, I do something on early childhood, they might listen to me because I have a personal relationship with them. We don't think about it that way. So part of this is about identifying yourself as either a maven or a connector. So you're someone who knows everything. You're the one that everybody goes to, because if you have a question, or if someone has a question, they come to you. You're that maven. Or a connector. You're the one who literally can help connect people to other people. You know everybody. You're the one, in my mom's case, who's got the huge, she still has her black book, but in her case it's green. It's like this thick. If anybody needs anything, you call mom, because she's got everybody's, she has all my phone numbers from back when I was in college, and I moved a lot, as we all did. She still has everybody's phone numbers and addresses, knows where everyone is. She's the connector in the family. You might be the connector in your community, but you don't think about yourself that way. So we're going to spend a few minutes, and then those who didn't have an opportunity to get up are going to get a chance to share. Yay. So that's why we volunteer early, to get it out of the way. You have an opportunity to fill this out, so you're going to fill it out on your own. So I'm going to walk through the instructions here really quickly. So basically, you can pull out your calendars. I find it helpful when people literally pull out their calendars, because you get a chance to be much more specific and then take this home and do something about it. What you want to do is figure out what you're doing for the next couple of months. What are some of the activities you're doing? Places you're going, meetings you're going to, presentations you're giving, social events that you're doing, a neighbor's house, a birthday party. List out what those are and put the date next to them. That's why it's nice to have your calendar. You might know them off the top of your head. But see, this is going to actually, when you actually are that specific, you're more likely to do something about it, because you've written it down and you've put a date. So we're going to put down what are some of the things coming up in your personal life. That's step one. Step two, list all of the people that you talk to or see at least twice a month that have nothing to do with your organization. Nothing. It could be, again, it could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, a former coworker, who knows? Who do you talk to on some sort of a regular basis that doesn't work with you in early childhood? Who doesn't work with you in early childhood? I should be more specific. Because if you're a volunteer, right, in your company maybe, or in your business, that might be somebody you talk to and you can engage them. Step 3 is to think of and so you can see the little quote about Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point here. There's somebody that knows everybody, right? They know what's happening in the community. They're the ones that if you want to get a ticket to something, that's who you call. They're the ones who, if you want to know what's going on with so-and-so down the street, you know exactly who to talk to, right? Who is that person? Who are those connectors? Who are the ones that everybody, if you want to get, as my business partner likes to talk about, there was a woman on her street who literally knew everything about what was going on with everybody on the street. So the time she rode her bicycle down the street when she was running late, her mom already knew where she had been, what she'd been doing, because, what was her name? I forgot her last name. She'd already called and told everybody else everything about it. Who is that person? Who are those 2 or 3 people? Write them down, and the next date you might be likely to communicate with them. Step 4, is there anybody that's an overlap from your 3 previous lists? Places you're going to go, people that you communicate with on a regular basis, and someone who's that connector or that maven. If there are overlaps, write them down here. They're going to probably go to the top of your list, right? Those are the people that if you engage them, it's not just you being the messenger, which is where it starts. Now they're being the messenger too. They are your next ring of your concentric circle. That's what we want to write too. And then in step 5, see, we're going to get specific here because we're going to have a plan and we're going to do this. From the list, are there any opportunities where you can commit to sharing information? Write those down with the date. And then if you need something from Diane or Heather or anybody else to help make this happen, write that down. That's what we're going to do. So we're not going to, and may I just suggest, you don't need to fill in every line. Pick just 2 or 3 lines on each of these. We're just getting started. This is about getting your brain going and thinking in this direction so you can continue to do this at home and with other people. So just spend 10 minutes figuring out the first couple of lines of each of these, and it's on your own. And then a few of you are going to come up and tell us what you came up with.